Hello, and thank you for joining us here from wherever in the world you are. My name is Ragnhildur Elín Arnardóttir, Raka for short, and I'm the former Minister of Industry and Commerce here in Iceland and a senior fellow with the Atlantic Council Global Energy Center. I will be the moderator here today, and I'm very happy and pleased to be joined by an esteemed panel as we explore the potential for geothermal energy development in the United States. Before we get started, a few housekeeping notes from me. The event is on the record, and we are currently live streaming on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. We encourage you to post about what you hear today and share on social media using the hashtag ACEnergy and by tagging us at AC Global Energy. If you would like to participate in our conversation, we welcome that and encourage you to submit your questions in the Q&A portal located at the bottom of your Zoom screen at any time during the event, and we will incorporate the questions as appropriate. Please note, however, that only those directly engaging via Zoom will be able to submit questions. And now turning to what is the frame for our conversation today. While solar and wind have expanded rapidly across the United States, vast baseload geothermal resources remain almost entirely untapped, with less than 1% of total US geothermal potential estimated to have been exploited. Geothermal heat is a reliable and cost-effective form of baseload power and an energy-efficient option for district heating and cooling, not to mention a potential energy source for various industrial processes. Policy advancements for US geothermal energy would serve as a catalyst for clean tech innovation and climate action and provide emissions reductions, cleaner air, energy security, job creation, new market growth, and bipartisan opportunities for renewable energy development. Today, our panelists will highlight lessons learned from Iceland, which I, being an Icelander, can proudly say that is one of the world's geothermal industry leaders, and will focus on the potential for US geothermal development, the challenges to geothermal growth and scale, as well as the role of fossil energy companies, enhanced geothermal systems technologies, EGS, and public policy in geothermal growth. Indeed, we have a lot to talk about, so it's my great pleasure to pass this over now to Her Excellency Ms. Þórdís Kolbrún Reykfjörð Gylfadóttir, the Icelandic Minister of Tourism, Industry and Innovation, to deliver keynote remarks. Þórdís Kolbrún was elected to Parliament in 2016 and has held her position as Minister and done a very good job since 2017. Thank you very much for being here, Minister, and over to you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a great pleasure for me to take part in this event arranged by the Atlantic Council Global Energy Center. And I have to say, you guys are especially lucky to have Raka on your team. She was in the ministry that I am in now, and she also did a very good job. And she has a lot of experience and knowledge. So you're lucky on that one. Today, we will be discussing the future of geothermal energy in the United States and the policy mechanism and the technologies that could facilitate geothermal development across the country. Iceland has, for a long time, been a strong advocate of exploring further the potential in sustainable utilization of geothermal energy. Our experience in this field in Iceland dates back for more than half a century. During this time, we have experienced firsthand the various positive impacts which the utilization of geothermal energy has had on our daily life and activities. 50 years ago, half of the houses in Iceland were heated with imported fossil fuel. In the oil crisis in the 70s, a government decision was made to change this. With combined efforts, we moved into an energy transition towards use of our domestic renewable resources, the heat under our feet, instead of imported fossil fuel. 50 years later, 90% of our homes are heated with geothermal energy through district heating systems, and the remaining 10% with renewable electricity. Furthermore, 25% of our electricity generation comes from geothermal energy. The social, environmental, and economical benefits of this development have been substantial. The macroeconomical benefits of the geothermal district heating system alone annually amount to around 7% of our GDP. The social and environmental benefits are even greater. We therefore know from first-hand experience that geothermal heat is a reliable and cost-effective form of baseload energy and energy-efficient option for district heating and cooling. Furthermore, geothermal energy and its spin-off products are a reliable power source for various innovative industries and processes, such as producing methanol fuel from carbon dioxide, fish farming, algae production, healthcare products, and last but not least, geothermal energy is an important factor in our tourist attractions, such as the Blue Lagoon, that I hope you know, and if you don't, you will have to experience it. Geothermal energy provides a unique opportunity of circular economy approach with full utilization of all the value streams from the resource and connecting different industries within a geothermal resource park, where the waste from one is a raw material for another. I mention these examples from my own country because it is our strong belief that sustainable utilization of geothermal energy can and should play a key role in our global actions towards climate change. It is a well-known fact, but often not discussed, that there are vast untapped possibilities for sustainable geothermal utilization in various corners of the world. When we from Iceland discuss geothermal energy abroad, we often face a general lack of knowledge about the potentials of geothermal energy utilizations. It seems that wind and solar energy are much higher on the radar and in the debate within the global portfolio of renewable energy sources. This affects financing, bankability, support, and other challenges for geothermal development. We can all agree that it should be our common goal to increase globally the share of renewable energy. To achieve this, we cannot afford to ignore the possibilities within geothermal energy. Therefore, this event today is important, and I welcome the initiative by the Atlantic Council to raise the geothermal flag. In the United States, wind and solar energy has expanded rapidly, while at the same time, vast geothermal resources remain almost entirely untapped, with less than 1% of total US geothermal electricity potential estimated to have been exploited. It has been mentioned that within the US, geothermal energy could scale up and expand beyond the Western United States and across the country to the nation's economic and environmental benefits. With this fact in mind, I see great possibilities for cooperation between Iceland and the US. In this respect, we can build on the previously signed MOU between the two countries on the economic cooperation, which, amongst other things, covers cooperation in the field of energy. Iceland's global leadership on cutting-edge geothermal technologies, paired with the United States' innovation in energy efficiency and world-class service sector, presents unique opportunities for cooperation in the energy sector. Iceland would certainly like to be a part of the geothermal development within the US, and I believe we can contribute with our knowledge and experience to this effect. Such cooperation could be through facilitation of clean and efficient energy technologies, opening up new forms of diplomatic and business engagement, looking into regulatory and financial challenges, and so forth. Our doors are open, and I look forward to increased cooperation between the US and Iceland in this field and our discussion in the panel here today. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. And we look forward to having you join our public panel discussion in a moment. And I look forward to hearing more about the potential cooperation between our two countries, the United States and Iceland. It's now my pleasure to introduce today's esteemed panelists. First to mention is the Honorable Daniel Simmons, Assistant Secretary for Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency at the U.S. Department of Energy. Welcome. Then I would like to mention Anne Robertson Tate, the President of Geothermex. Alexander Richter, the managing director of the Icelandic Renewable Energy Cluster and the founder of Think Geoenergy. Ms. Kate Young, Geothermal Laboratory Program Manager at the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. And once again, the Honorable Minister Þórdís Kolbrún Reykfjörð Gylfadóttir, the Icelandic Minister for Tourism, Industry and Innovation. Without further ado, I would like to jump into our first round of questions. Starting with the Assistant Secretary for Energy, Secretary Simmons, who in his role leads the Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy to promote affordable and reliable energy to enhance economic growth and energy security. That's not no small task, Assistant Secretary. I would like to ask you, over the past 4 years, your office has advocated for greater geothermal development in the United States, and I'm curious to hear more about that. If you could please tell the audience in what programs and projects your office has invested resources and what is farthest along, and just to be looking into the future, what is on the horizon in that area?
Well, thank you very much. As you note, I'm the Assistant Secretary for the Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy, which is all the renewables, as well as work on energy efficiency and vehicles. It's a really fun portfolio today, and geothermal is a very interesting area. I really think this is a very exciting time for geothermal energy, in part because after years of work, we are starting work on a program that we call Forge, which is out in Utah, which is actually to do really as a laboratory, a real laboratory in terms of enhanced geothermal systems, so that we can really hopefully move the ball in terms of what we can get with enhanced geothermal systems. Given that, last year I visited the Salton Sea, and it was really great to see these geothermal plants in action. However, one of the things that really struck me about that experience was you have to get the right resources. You need the heat, you need the water, and you need the right permeability of rock, and that's difficult. And it is a very small geographical area where that is possible. And so we need to work to move the ball. And so that is what the Forge project is, and they are currently drilling so that we can really help advance where enhanced geothermal systems is going. Also, one of the things that we have we released, don't remember if it was this year or last year, is called our GeoVision report, which is a study of what contribution we believe that geothermal can provide in the United States. And what the report shows is that the geothermal generation can reach 60 gigawatts of capacity by 2050, which would be 8.5% of the U.S. electric generation system. That is a huge increase from today. That is a massive increase from today. But what the point of GeoVision is to provide that vision, is so that we can see forward about where we need to go, what we need to research, because that's at the Department of Energy. That is our job, to do that research. To take the monies that Congress has appropriated to us and to drive the technology forward, so that we can have geothermal in many locations where we don't necessarily have it today. So there is really what it comes down to. Those are two things that we are really excited about right now. There's obviously more, but in terms of geothermal energy, that is really what is top of mind. What we really need to, what we really want to continue to drive forward. So thank you for having me today.
Thank you very much. This was very interesting, and obviously there's huge potential of further utilizing geothermal resources in the United States, and which leads me directly to our next panelist, Anne Robertson Tate, the president of Geothermics, which, for those in the audience who don't know, is a large, comprehensive geothermal consulting and services firm with geothermal projects in more than 56 countries worldwide. And Anne, as an extensive professional experience working in geothermal energy, much of which is in the United States, but obviously, as your company profile projects also in the rest of the world. Can you, following up on the Assistant Secretary's remarks, can you give the audience sort of a top-level view of what the industry looks like now and how we got there?
Sure. Tack fyrir, Raga. Thank you very much, Raga. I'd be glad to do that. And I'll start with your last point, how we got here, and then maybe explain where we are now. And I think it'll be helpful to show a map to do that. So let me just put this into presentation mode. And hopefully you're seeing a map of the Western United States and all the power plants that are happening there. So, oh, sorry, didn't mean to do that. Let me go back. Sorry.
That's all right. We will just begin again.
Okay, I'll try that one more time. I showed it too quickly. Before I go back to the map, I'll just go into a little bit of history about geothermal in the US. And the first geothermal power plants were installed at the Geysers field in 1960. And this is just up the road from me here in Northern California. The two units that were started in 1960 totaled 26 megawatts, and that was our geothermal beginning. Shortly after, in 1963, a couple more joined, and then in the early 1970s, 6 more units were installed for another 300 megawatts. The Geysers is an amazing field. It's dry steam, one of the rare dry steam fields around the world. And it eventually went on to generate more than 2,000 megawatts of power from one field, making it the largest field in the world. After the first few units were installed at the Geysers, the Public Utilities Regulatory Policy Act of 1978 was passed. I'm a geologist, but I really know the value of policy, and PURPLE was responsible for a significant geothermal growth spurt in the United States for two reasons. It required investor-owned utilities to purchase power from independent power producers, and it offered standard contracts with bonus pricing for the first 10 years of operation for geothermal and other renewable energy projects. And when I joined Geothermex in 1985, we worked on nearly all of the geothermal projects that were developed under PURPA contracts this way. It was an amazing time for geothermal in the US. And these included projects across, I might ask the host if they might share the map, since I was having a little difficulty with that on my behalf, because it will be helpful to look at it. The projects are in a variety of geologic domains: sedimentary environments down in Southern California and the Imperial Valley, high desert in the Basin and Range province, which covers all of Nevada, some of Utah, northeastern California, Oregon, and western Idaho. There's volcanic geothermal resources in the Long Valley caldera. Thank you very much for showing that. Um, and in Koso in the Mojave Desert, and you can see some of these on the map now, thank you, and Puna in Hawaii. There's a few projects even in New Mexico and Alaska, and we have a wide range of power production temperatures from just over boiling at 100 degrees Celsius to more than 340 degrees down in the Salton Sea in Southern California. Which is interestingly both a sedimentary and a volcanic domain. You'll see the Gulf of California sort of poking up at the bottom of the map. That's a big rift, something with which the Icelanders are eminently familiar. But it's actually a sedimentary basin that hosts all the Colorado River deltaic sediments. So it's interesting, and it's supplied by a very saline brine that includes a lot of lithium, which is a big story today, as you probably recognize. So the geothermal power sector in the US is pretty diverse in terms of location and geologic conditions and temperatures, and also power cycles. And I wonder if you might show the power plant slide next, please. Thank you. We have binary power plants, which are for cooler resources. We have steam power plants at the geysers in the lower right corner. That's one of the many power plants at the geysers. We have what are called flash steam, which produce a mixture of hot water and steam down in the Salton Sea and at other locations. That's Cal Energy Berkshire Hathaway's plant, and all these photos came directly from the operators, just to give acknowledgement. another binary plant in New Mexico run by Circ Energy. So just a quick view of only a few of the power plants that exist in the United States. And I wanted to just mention that as an industry, we are progressing. 9 new geothermal power purchase agreements were signed in 2020 so far. Maybe there'll be another. And the last time that happened was during that big spurt during PURPA in the 1980s. So what's happening now is that we're globally recognizing that climate change is real. We have a platform for geothermal growth, and we're really pushing hard now to increase consumer demand for geothermal energy, just like happened for solar and wind, and putting policies in place that support geothermal growth. I think in the energy transition, we need every bit of energy we can get, especially geothermal. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Jan. This was very interesting and good to have the overview that you provided with the slides. That worked out. Moving to Alexander Richter, Alex. He is the managing director of the Icelandic Renewable Energy Cluster and founder of Think Geoenergy, which is a website with a lot of information on geothermal, everything that you need to know, basically. Alex, you being, and this is what I'm stating here, as you are being, you being one of the world's leading geothermal experts, and with a good pulse on the United States, how do you see the future of US geothermal unfolding? In your view also, maybe if I can get you to speculate, how an incoming Biden-Harris administration, how might their approach to geothermal push for some more more development in that area?
Thank you, Raka. I mean, to be called an expert with the likes of Kate and Anne here on the panel, I'm humbled, but very briefly, the United States have been on the forefront of geothermal development, for a long, long time. And a lot of the American players actually have worked internationally and developed, I think, most of the capacity internationally as well. So seeing how development is going in the United States today, and actually we've seen a decrease in development, from year to year in recent years, but we've also seen a reawakened interest in the geothermal sector, and there's a lot more efforts now being done to promote geothermal than ever before. So I think the geothermal sector in the US has managed to finally get into the discussions on renewable energy in the US, and that beyond the Western states. So that is very positive. And there's a lot of things happening that we might not give too much credit for, but technological development, the work on the Forge project in Utah, as Assistant Secretary mentioned, and that NREL is involved as well. These are technological advances in R&D projects that kind of help not only geothermal development in the US, but also internationally, because we as a global industry share a lot of that information. So that is very positive. And naturally, what Anne also mentioned, lithium actually creates a complete different angle to geothermal energy as well. And in that combination, I think geothermal has made inroads that we wouldn't have seen or would have expected some years ago. So that is very positive. And the other element is that we also see is that the topic of heat is finally making its inroads into the discussions about energy in the US as well. And that is particularly a topic where geothermal can shine. And in that context, like we see in Europe, an increasing blurring line between shallow geothermal, like heat exchange systems, and the deep geothermal resources that we look into in geothermal, is also creating opportunities for geothermal across the United States. And I think one of the examples is a fantastic project at Cornell University in New York that Iceland is involved in as well. Here, a university that wants to tap geothermal for heating in the university. And I think that shows that there's development happening in geothermal in the US beyond the Western states. And that is very exciting. Talking about the current administration's, let's say, emphasis on renewable energy, that has been a challenge. And with the new administration indicating a path back to climate change legislation and support, we naturally hope that this will include additional support for renewable energy development in the US, last but not least for geothermal. And in that context, naturally, we can look into several elements about funding for the DOE and its research programs, about streamlined permitting for projects at the Bureau of Land Management, and I guess also the R&D efforts with regards to a technology transfer from the oil and gas sector to geothermal. And I think this is where probably we'll see a lot of leading technology from the United States being developed for the geothermal sector. And I think these are very, very exciting times.
Thank you very much, Alex. And I just want to mention that we have a lot of questions and a lot of involvement within the audience, and I will try to get to the questions later on during our meeting. But I want to get through all of the panelists for the first round. And next on my list is Kate Young, who is a geothermal laboratory program manager at the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, where she has been since 2008. And as one of the leading contributors to the recent Department of Energy GeoVision report that the Assistant Secretary mentioned in his remarks, could you, Kate, briefly outline some top-line takeaways from your findings? For example, what is the U.S. geothermal potential, and how do you imagine we can tap it? What policy? I know you can't maybe go deeply into policy, but technological and financial mechanisms are necessary in the U.S. to move us forward in this area.
Yes, thanks so much for having me on the panel this morning. So the main takeaway of GeoVision is just that geothermal is an incredible resource for the U.S. And there's a lot of talk with the increased deployment of variable renewables that we need some sort of storage or something to balance these renewables. And we just have this incredible amount of heat stored beneath the US everywhere throughout the US. And so what GeoVision did was look at hundreds of scenarios. The ones that are reported in GeoVision are just a few that they've highlighted of the thousands of scenarios that could be possible. But really what it highlights is just that there is this huge potential, anywhere from 60 to 120 gigawatts that can be deployed competitively by 2050. And so the two R&D focuses that they focus on is really how do we reduce the cost of this deployment so that it becomes economically competitive with the lower cost of solar and wind as it's being deployed, and how do we access this geothermal anywhere? And that's really through new technologies like EGS and AGS, like the Assistant Secretary was highlighting with the DOE's Forge project earlier in his discussion. In terms of what are what's necessary, how do we get there? Certainly one of the things that the study highlighted was the long permitting timelines, and that these timelines can slow and even prevent the development of geothermal. And so one of the scenarios we ran was scenarios where these timelines were increased, and improving those timelines alone can double the deployment of geothermal in the U.S. So it really does have an impact on the potential to deploy geothermal. And the other is really the analysis that we did looking at policy mechanisms, comparing the geothermal policy mechanisms relative to the solar and wind. We noticed increases in deployment and the impact that these policy mechanisms had, not only on the ability to deploy solar and wind, but also to drive new players and new businesses in the market to help drive down the cost of those technologies to be able to operate independently of those policies, which is what we see today. And so, we analyzed some scenarios where similar investments and policies were designed and developed for geothermal and saw similar impacts in those models for geothermal. We also look to other countries in Europe and throughout Europe and the impact that those policies have had on the deployment not only of geothermal electricity, but also district heating and direct use, and the impact that that has had on the ability to deploy geothermal, it helps to promote community understanding and adoption of the technologies, and also helps to drive down those costs technologically through economies of scale in those countries.
Thank you very much. There's so much that we could follow up with each and every one. But moving now back to the minister, Minister Gylfadóttir from Iceland, just to follow up on your remarks before, and focusing on potential cooperation between Iceland and the U.S. What opportunities do you see for Iceland diplomatically, commercially, in engaging with the U.S. on geothermal development? You mentioned an MOU that has been signed between the two governments. How could your ministry work with the Department of Energy and the upcoming Biden-Harris administration to build upon the pre-existing MOU done with the previous administration?
Well, we have enjoyed a very good cooperation with the U.S. government over the years and meet regularly with the U.S. Embassy in Iceland to discuss possibilities for further cooperation, especially within the field of energy. And I think there are various opportunities to strengthen this relationship, both diplomatically and commercially. We, from my ministry, have had some meetings with the Department of Energy in recent months and discussed various possibilities for cooperation, and we will certainly continue that dialogue in the months to come. The Iceland Renewable Energy Cluster, with Alex Richter leads, is a good platform for direct commercial connection between companies within the geothermal industry in both countries. So I believe we can further strengthen our network between the two countries, both on a government diplomatic level and on a direct B2B commercial level. And I would, for example, like to follow this event after with a direct dialogue between my ministry with the U.S. Department of Energy based on our good discussion here today. So that would be one example.
Thank you very much. And I think the ball has just been given to Assistant Secretary Simmons. So can we build on this? You, with your experience in your office, can we make sure that the transition from your good work and your government over to the next coming administration, how can we build on this and take the ball where Minister Gylfadóttir has so graciously kicked it off?
We will do this. We will continue this dialogue. This is I think it is really important. One of the things about geothermal energy is I do not want to politicize any type of energy, because I think that is harmful in the end, because then because it gets politics as opposed to technology. And so with this example of working together from one administration to the next administration, we want to start this dialogue. We want this dialogue to continue into the next administration, because there's nothing partisan about this. And there is so much opportunity for geothermal energy. There is so much opportunity, I think, to learn from the Icelandic experience with geothermal energy. As we've talked about with GeoVision, there is so much opportunity that we see in the Q&A. There were some questions. There was one, why are we focused on Forge? To I don't know. to the exclusion of some direct use. And the point is, we tried to do everything, and it's hard, but there was a lot of support in Congress, and I do not see that changing for geothermal energy. But we need to look at the broad perspective. Forge is important. Enhanced geothermal systems is important, but also how do we drive more direct use? How do we use geothermal as storage? Which, when they first told me about that idea, I thought it was kind of crazy, honestly, but it apparently isn't. So let's make sure we're using all the opportunities, including working with Iceland and other countries, New Zealand, for example, to really drive this technology forward.
You're absolutely right, and my apologies if I made it sound like this was a bipartisan issue, which I totally agree with you that
yeah, and you didn't. I just really wanted to stress that we don't like this is not a political issue, and we need to drive it forward.
Yeah, my objection, my point was more, how can we secure a smooth transition from the work that you and your office has been doing for the last years, and have it continue. But with just to follow up on this, if we look domestically in the U.S., what actors does the U.S., and then I mean public, private, and civil society, need to engage with and to continue to engage with, and for geothermal, in order to again foster this transition and this development in the industry that we are hopefully experiencing?
Well, it is at the Department of Energy, the vast majority of staff is career staff. Kate Young, for example, at NREL, is not going anywhere. Sue Ham, who leads our geothermal technology office, is not going anywhere, and the rest of that team. And so there is a lot. Please, for everyone that is interested, please engage with our geothermal technology office. Please engage with Kate at NREL. That engagement is critical for us. It's critical for us to make sure that we are funding the right areas moving forward. It's critical for us that we are then when we talk to Congress about the things that we really care about, that we have as much information as possible. So that's really my ask, is to please engage with the Geothermal Technology Office, with Kate and her team, so that we have as much information as possible, so that we are as formed as possible. So again, thank you to the Atlantic Council for doing this today, because I think this is an important example of the things that's necessary.
Thank you. On that note, I want to move to Anne again, and on how we can expand the industry to reach its full potential. What's the role of the private sector, and in particular, is there a role for oil and gas companies? Is that something an experience that they have that we can build on in the geothermal industry? And then I know that you want to get or make a point that we should be talking about the demand side also, of geothermal, the heating, the heat pumps, etc. So how do you see the possibilities for the industry to reach its full potential?
Thank you again, Raga. I would say, the major and minor oil companies have entered and left the geothermal industry already a few times, some of them more than once, and they're back again. And I think, it's an obvious adjacency between oil and gas and geothermal. We're both drilling and extracting fluids from the subsurface. So it makes a lot of sense. And I'll just note that Geothermex was acquired by Schlumberger 10 years ago, and one of the things we've been focusing on is what of that oil and gas technology can we use to promote better geothermal drilling and other technologies related to drilling, to really maximize our cost benefit sort of profile. So the private sector in the US has really driven the growth of geothermal energy, by investor-owned utilities at the beginning, and by oil and gas producers even. Shell, Gulf, others, Chevron, Texaco, were all involved back in the day. There have been dedicated geothermal spin-offs from oil and gas companies in a few cases. Power plant technologies are in the hands of the private sector to some degree, and I'm not going to leave the DOE outside, and of course, homegrown geothermal developers. And I just want to say that we didn't do this by ourselves. There was significant basic research into geothermal in the 70s and 80s here by the U.S. Geological Survey and others, followed by the Department of Energy's cost-share drilling programs that led to the discovery of lots of resources, including those that don't have obvious manifestations like hot springs. Government funding brought treated municipal wastewater up to the geysers field, which was declining after many years of production, and recharged it so it can extend its life and continue to generate for decades to come. So the US Department of Energy has a strong focus now on the next generation of geothermal resources. As Secretary Simmons mentioned, this is enhanced geothermal systems to ones that need a little help to improve their permeability, increase their productivity, pushing them across the commerciality line, if you will. And I think the combination of robust research and a strong private sector that actively lobbies for geothermal friendly policies and gets support for government R&D has served us very well, and the industry really values and maintains that partnership, not only for its own benefit, but for improving, the country as a whole. And I
Great.
did want to mention that I've been talking mostly about geothermal power, but a couple of the questions in the chat and some of the stuff we've discussed make me want to say something about what I call demand side geothermal. So power plants on the supply side, reducing the need for power on the demand side. There's a lot to offer in the US, as has been demonstrated in Iceland and New Zealand and many other countries. Um, we host many low temperature geothermal resources in the United States that would be pretty tough to develop for power because of their temperature. And I'm talking about things less than 100 degrees Celsius, maybe even less than 120 degrees Celsius, because that's about the lowest temperature that you might want to go to for power. Um, and this, as you mentioned, Draga, at the beginning, it can be used for process heat, for space heating. And the time is right now to really increase the use of these so we can take the benefit of geothermal all the way as far as we can. And then shallow heat exchange is another source of geothermal energy. These are used by using geothermal or ground source heat pumps for heating and cooling of space. It's happening all over America. University campuses, and particularly in the northern tier, are really embracing this kind of technology and hybridizing it with other clean technologies, small solar and wind plants. It's quite amazing. Thermal storage, kinetic energy systems. So universities
And the
are
list
kind
goes
of
on.
are
I'm
leading the
sorry
way.
I'm sorry to interrupt you,
No, no,
but
no,
we
it's
have
okay.
many things to get through. I see, and I put in a request right now with the Icelandic Council that this is only the first meeting that we
Yes.
have on
So
geothermal.
short
But
story, there's a lot to do.
exactly. Thank you, Anne. Alex, I want to build on the comments from the minister and the assistant secretary, who obviously have stated the will from the public side, from Iceland and the US, to cooperate further on geothermal. On the business side, you coming from the geothermal cluster, or the renewable energy cluster, how can foreign business actors in countries such as Iceland, and obviously there are other countries as well, work with US companies and government agencies to grow the geothermal industry? Have companies tried in the past? You have a long experience in this area. How has it been? Have there been success or difficulties? Can you briefly, though, I'm sorry, we are running out of time already, run this by us, please?
And to keep this relatively short, yes, indeed. So there's a lot of cooperation between businesses on geothermal topics, on the research side, but also in concrete development. at the moment currently mostly outside of the United States, but there's a lot of engagement with US parties and players. And in the past, Icelandic companies actually have developed a project in California. The bank that I used to work with, we've actually financed two important wells for projects in Nevada and in California. And actually, we were working with Geothermics at that time on those deals. So there's been a lot of engagement, and we've actually at that time invested in projects in the US. And there have been several of the engineering firms active in the US, I think less so in recent years, but again, with US partners internationally. Where do I see this going forward? I guess particular in the context of heat is where Iceland has a lot of experience, and what we call cascaded use of geothermal. So the multiple use of geothermal heat as for industrial applications, heatings and etc. That is where Icelandic companies have a lot of experience and I think a lot to offer in that context with players. And that's also why we, with the support of the ministry, actually working on that project in Cornell. And there are many other examples, fish farming, food dehydration, etc., where we have a lot of experience where we can work with US players in the United States. And I guess that comes to the point where we really need to extend the business model for geothermal. Because if you only look at power generation, it's only one revenue stream. But if you understand that we can add additional revenue streams to projects, for example, like lithium, and the economic value that these projects have locally, it becomes a totally different value proposition in the discussions on renewable energy deployment in the US.
Mm-hmm. Just maybe to follow up on this, there's a question from the audience that I would like to pose to you, and then if anyone else wants to jump in. But it's regarding the business side. It's a question from Jason Bloom. He says, returns on investment in wind and solar have become fairly well defined. Energy majors are pursuing average returns of 10% in the renewable portfolios, according to Bloomberg, about half the return they demanded from an oil project. What kind of returns are geothermal developers able to achieve? How does that vary by region? Based on your experience in the finance industry regarding geothermal. I know I'm putting you on the spot.
Yeah, well, you do, but fair enough. It is a challenge to evaluate this simply due to the fact that the electricity price that you can achieve from a project differs so greatly by both country, but also by the states in the US. And I guess the portfolio standards in the US have created an incentive for utilities to pay more for geothermal power, given its baseload character. So that has created a certain incentive for development. And I think we need a little bit more support on that, given the flexibility that geothermal provides. And with that, the economics and the return on investments change dramatically for developers. And that paired with cost savings through oil and gas technology and some of those developments, I think could help kind of increase the financial return for projects and therefore for projects to become more competitive. But at the same time, it's also certain incentives like production tax credits and investment tax credits that were in existence in the US and have degraded greatly in recent years. And a certain duration of those could help change the financial aspects and investments attractiveness for geothermal.
Thank you very much for this. And time flies. We have about a little over 10 minutes left of this seminar. I want to move to Kate and focus a little bit about technology, especially what role will the EGS technologies play in tapping the full potential of US geothermal, and what areas of the country are ripe for exploration, and what will be the benefits and consequences of its expansion, if you could, Kate.
Yes, thank you. So just to talk a little bit about what EGS is. So traditional geothermal, and these are the plants that Anne was talking about and highlighting earlier in her questions today. But we need three key things. We need heat, connected fracture network, and we need fluid. And that's there's some key problems with this. The first, that the risk is very high. You know, we're targeting a fracture with hot water, and it can be like finding a needle in a haystack. You know, compared with oil and gas, when they are doing exploration, they're sort of looking for or exploring for the haystack of petroleum underground. These traditional geothermal sites are also limited to point locations, and mostly in the Western US. And so really what Suham and the geothermal technologies is focused on is, how do we capture this heat that's available anywhere? How do we do geothermal anywhere? And so what that means is that all we really need is this heat. And we can engineer a way to bring this heat to the surface. So this reduces the upfront risk. It reduces the limited geographic locations where it can be developed. We can develop geothermal anywhere in the U.S. where it's needed, where it's convenient, and that's a big deal. That's huge. So there's several different technologies that are being developed, and variations of these technologies, whether they're hybrid or variations on things that are being developed. So EGS is one of them, and that's where GTO is focused on their Forge location in Milford, Utah, and really advancing the research there. Another one is closed loop, or AGS, Advanced Geothermal System Research. There's hybrids of these, and it's hard to say at this point which of these will come out the winner, or if multiple ones of these technologies will progress to economic and commercial development. But what's really exciting is that there's so much interest in this area right now. There's there's new startups. Every week I hear about a new startup, so many from oil and gas that are turning their attention to developing and advancing these technologies. And so the market potential for these new technologies is just absolutely staggering. In terms of what are the areas in the US, this is a resource potential map. And so those black dots are really highlighting the areas where traditional hydrothermal is possible. But you can see that this heat and this technology could be deployed throughout the US. And so, you know, what's the low-hanging fruit? The low-hanging fruit is where this heat is closest to the surface. It's less expensive to drill. It's easier to access, and you can see these areas that are highlighted sort of in the more favorable reds and oranges throughout this map. But what's really exciting is that as we start developing and as we start deploying geothermal anywhere, we start to see economies of scale. And that's really one of the things that's been lacking in the US. And as we see economies of scale, the costs go down. And we've seen this time and time again in the oil and gas industry, the benefit of these economies of scale and drilling hundreds to thousands of wells a year, rather than just the handful that we see in the US today. And so the other thing that I want to point out is just that although it's deeper in some places, it is not beyond the reach. The oil and gas industry has done this and have drilled to these really deep locations, 12 kilometers. And so it's not, this is all within reach with technologies that we have today. And the third part of your question, sorry. The third part of your question.
Because we're running out of time. Thank you.
Yep. It was just, what are the benefits? And so there's lots of benefits. One of the questions online was, can we provide flexibility? The answer is absolutely yes. There's a demonstrated plant that's doing that today. Ormat's plant in Puna, Hawaii is operating flexibly to provide that flexibility to the grid. We provide, and the other one that I really want to emphasize is just creating these long-term jobs. The oil and gas industry has really been hit this past year with the downturn in the market, and those jobs are directly transferable to the geothermal industry. Everything from geology and exploration to drilling to chemical processing, all of that can be applied directly and repurposed into this geothermal industry.
Great. The third slide is beautiful. It just sums it up, the benefits of geothermal to all of us who are sold on it. I just want to go quickly again to the minister before we'll conclude with a lightning round question for all panelists, if we can sum it up in that way. But Minister, Gylfadóttir, I would like to ask you a little bit about Iceland's cooperation and experience in cooperating with other countries in geothermal. Just very briefly, if you can tell us a little bit how Iceland has worked closely with other countries and sort of the Icelandic experience in that raising the geothermal flag all over the world.
Yes, thank you. Iceland has been quite active for a number of years in taking part in geothermal projects abroad, mainly in Eastern Europe, Asia, and Central and South America. We have signed 16 bilateral MOUs on energy cooperation with a main focus on geothermal cooperation. This has facilitated Icelandic energy, engineering, and consultant companies to take part in developing geothermal projects in various corners of the world. Our experience of this is generally very positive. These projects both concern district geothermal heating and energy production. Our contribution has, for example, been in the face of scientific exploration and drilling, advice on technical issues, engineering, building of facilities and infrastructure, and maintenance. I believe this is a win-win situation, and our focus has been of extending our network in this field and taking part in more geothermal projects abroad. This is closely linked with the fact that the United National Geothermal University is located in Iceland and has been here since 1979. So from that time, we have graduated around 600 geothermal experts from all over the world, geothermal ambassadors, as we like to call them. And after studying in Iceland, they return home and often take part in geothermal development within their country. And we are very proud to host the UN Geothermal University, and our focus on exporting our knowledge in this field and taking part in geothermal projects abroad is closely linked to this.
Thank you very much. And just, I'm going to throw out this question to all of the panelists. We could either do it first come, first serve, who wants to jump in and answer, but just briefly, I want to ask you about your vision for the future of the US geothermal industry, the strongest opportunities, greatest obstacles, which actors has to be engaged in 15 seconds or less. Who wants to start?
Okay, I will. I see a tripling of geothermal power in the near future, and by that I mean within the next 20 years. Much of it is going to be produced from moderate temperature geothermal resources that power binary plants. Not all of them will have enough permeability, so EGS is going to come into the play, and it'll become more mainstream, and it will push these resources into the commercial range. The challenge will be to move beyond power price and into the value proposition that geothermal offers, not just only as a source of clean baseload power, but also as a way to solve grid instability issues as intermittent renewables grow and grow, which they will. Thanks.
Thank you. That was a very, very good, concise grasp the question well.
I learned my lesson last time.
Does anyone have anything to add very quickly?
Or Minister does.
Did Anne, please, Assistant Secretary.
I was just saying the minister had one. The only thing I would say, one thing that really matters is the valuation of geothermal, the valuation of the value of energy and the type of energy, the type of electricity that the geothermal provides to the grid is not well compensated in terms of base load, in terms of flexibility. So some of these valuation questions are really important. That's that's one thing that we really hope to do a better job, so that we can see a lot more geothermal and other resources like hydropower.
Right.
I think as an add-on, I think is the really kind of what Kate also mentioned is the economic value of geothermal locally, the impact not only in the jobs it creates, but also in the local taxes. That is kind of like way more advantageous for geothermal than it is for other renewable technologies. So the impact that can geothermal have with the multiple revenue streams, also in the terms of energy security locally and statewide and beyond, I think makes a fantastic case for geothermal in the US and clearly elsewhere as well.
Mm-hmm.
Great final word. Oh, no, the final words are coming here from the minister.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to say, like I mentioned before, I believe the U.S. geothermal industry has a bright future and a great potential. And I'm interested to, I think we have a lot of opportunities in that field. And in short, I would say that from our experience, the main obstacles we have been facing when it comes to geothermal development or getting projects financed, some technological challenges and competition from other renewable sectors, which often have greater access to funding and support. So to change this, I think we definitely need to have all actors on board: the geothermal community, the financial institutions, the government, and the municipalities. And if I could just add for around 30 seconds, I just wanted to, because Alex mentioned the local effect, because there are, the geothermal energy can also be integrated into other value streams, and such in tourism. And I think you all know the Blue Lagoon, our #1 tourist attraction in Iceland. And many are not aware of the fact that without the geothermal power plant next to it, Svartsengi, there would be no Blue Lagoon. So the lagoon came about after the geothermal power plant was built. It is sort of wastewater from the plant. We therefore always find it a bit amusing when some of our visitors admire the Blue Lagoon, but then they ask, why did they have to build power plant next to the Blue Lagoon? So I think that sums up, the local effect and the opportunities that you can gain when you have the right focus. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. And I realized I didn't give Kate a chance to answer the question. I don't want to leave her out. Kate, would you like to jump in real quickly?
Sure. Yeah, I think the closing remark I'd like to make is just that we talk often about the impacts or the contributions of carbon from the electricity market, but there's also contributions from several other areas, from the heating and cooling and from industrial and from transportation. And one of the neat things about geothermal is it really has incredible potential to have an impact, not only in the electricity market, but also in the space heating and industrial markets as well. And so it really does have broad applications.
Thank you very much. And I want to thank all of you who joined us in the audience, and especially this esteemed, wonderful panel for being here and share their perspective. This was obviously a timely and a productive conversation that is only the first of many. I would like to thank Zach Strauss, Zeynep Viranen, and the Atlantic Council AV team for their work in organizing this event. And I'm particularly happy that we went through it without any electrical failures or technical problems. I think that is a good testament of the situation that we're in. If you would like to rewatch today's event or share the stream with a colleague, you can find the recording on the Atlantic Council website and the YouTube channel. And for a more advanced energy content, tune in on Friday at noon Eastern for the next episode of Energy Store's Innovation Stream for a discussion with Wade Beataraff of Plug and Play on early stage venture capital financing and global corporate innovation trends. Until next time, thank you very much and have a wonderful day.